Hey guys, my name's Sam and welcome to Prep Medic. This week's video should be a quick one. Today, we're gonna talk about spiking regular tubing on saline, as well as spiking blood tubing. So today should be a pretty quick and simple video. And for most medical providers watching this is probably going to be a review. But today we're gonna be talking about spiking regular tubing, filling the IV set, getting that ready for that IV start. I do have a full IV start video that I will leave a link to down below and put up on one of these corners if you wanna go through that procedure. But then the second thing we're gonna talk about today is spiking a blood-wise. So spiking blood tubing is a little bit more complicated, and I've got some tips and tricks that I think will help you out along the way. So let's start with the basics and spike a 500 ml bag onto 20 drop tubing. And let's talk about both of these components briefly. First and foremost, don't forget, saline is a medication. You still have to go through your medication rights before you administer this. There are a lot of things that come in bags that look very similar to normal saline that aren't. The biggest one I can think of off the top of my head is going to be 3% saline. It seems like a small difference, but if you start infusing 3% saline when you're trying to give normal saline, that patient is gonna have a bad day. So we wanna be looking at expiration dates, and hint, hint, this is way expired, so wouldn't be giving this to a normal patient. I know it's normal saline. I don't think there's any contraindications on the patient. It's the right patient, all of that stuff. We can go through it relatively quickly, but we still need to be doing our checks. We're gonna look at the fluid, make sure it's clear and we don't have a bunch of nastiness floating around this bag. The next thing we have to talk about is the drop set that we're going to spike. So our whole goal here is to fill this entire piece of plastic tubing with saline, so when we connect it to the IV, we are not causing a major air embolus and making that patient have a much worse day. But these sets come in a couple different varieties. This is a very obvious difference. We have just a standard drip set, and then we have a blood Y. But there are ones that look very similar to this. So this is a 20 drop set, which means 20 drops in this chamber equals 1 ml. You can get this in 15 drop sets, you can get this in 10 drop sets, and for medication administration, if you are actually counting drips for like a presser, if you don't have a pump available, you're gonna go with 60 drop tubing. And when it says 60 drop tubing, that means 60 drips equals 1 ml. Generally speaking, you have the macro and the micro drips on your ambulance. That's kind of standard. So this is going to be a macro drip, 20 mLs, or sorry, 20 drop tubing. So let's start actually spiking this tubing. We wanna have our PPE on. We wanna make sure we're safe and aseptic as possible. There are a couple sterile points in this procedure, but most of it just has to be aseptic when we're establishing it on the patient. So first and foremost, we gotta open this up, and all of these have a different opening method here. So I'm gonna open this up, and I'm not even gonna take it out of here because I like this as a nice aseptic tray right there, and I have all the components I need to establish it. You'll see as this comes out, we've got a couple different things. We have this part here that's gonna insert into the bag. We have the drip chamber. This one has a filter, and then we have multiple ports for medication administration. We have a roller clamp, and then we have the end here. So these 2 points right here, so this point and the tip right here, if I take these caps off, these are sterile fields. We do not want to touch them once we take the caps off. I usually do that at the last second because those attach to the patient. Everything else is aseptic like we were talking about. So I'm gonna take this right here, I'm gonna take this roller clamp, and I'm going to roll that down all the way. Make sure that nothing can get through this tubing. I'm gonna set it right back down right here. Next, I'm going to take my saline bag. We did the medication rights. And again, underneath this blue cap, this is a sterile field, so I don't want to touch underneath that cap. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this cap, I'm going to pull it off just like that. I have the end right there. I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm gonna take the cap off that spike. Now, this is technically a sharp. You'd have to really jam it into to draw blood. So just be a little bit cautious with it, even so. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to just insert it straight into the bag. I don't want to stick it at an angle because that's going to come out the side, and then we're going to need to get a new bag of saline or get really creative with a tape job. So I'm going to put that all the way up, and I have spiked into the bag. The next thing I'm going to do is hold this up, and I'm going to squeeze the drop chamber right here. So I'm going to squeeze it. I'm going to fill it about halfway to 2/3 full. If you're in the transport environment, it's pretty common to fill this pretty far up so you don't, when you put it on the patient's chest, you're not getting air bubbles, anything like that. So once the drop chamber is filled up to that point, I'm now going to start opening this roller clamp. So I'm going to open this roller clamp slowly until I see it drops coming through. And I'm going to wait until I get some drips out of the end. I don't need to take the end cap off. All right, so now I've got drops through the entire set of tubing. I'm not worried about air being in there. I can see that there's no air bubbles. I want to keep this upright as much as possible so we can hang it on our IV pole or store it, get it ready for use. While it's not flowing, you can put it on its side. That's totally fine. Just know that if it is flowing, that will cause some air to get into the tubing, and you might have to flush that out, not into the patient, obviously. Now, when we're ready to go with this, we can just take this tie off. We can extend it to the patient. We want to swab off the lure lock we're connecting it to on the IV. We just take this end off and connect it directly to their IV site, and then we can drop it as we need to. Like I said, this tip is sterile until it's connected to the patient. Now to like titrate dosing here, you know, we can run it wide open. If we want to have like a bolus, we can throw this on pressure bags, but we can also start counting the drips. So remember that every drip is going to be, or every 20 drips is going to be 1 ml, and that will allow us to calculate out how much we're giving them over what amount of time. Okay, so that is spiking just a general normal saline IV bag. Now let's talk about spiking blood tubing. This gets a little bit more complicated. So a blood Y, which you're going to see in a second, is going to be the specialized IV tubing. That one, it has 2 ports. So when we're giving blood, now some of these blood tubings do not have both ports, but generally speaking, a blood Y will have 2 ports. On one end, you're going to have normal saline, and that's to flush the line between blood administrations, between units of blood, and the other one's going to be connected directly to the blood. Blood tubing is something that is very good to have even if your service does not have access to blood, simply because if you've called a helicopter for a trauma or you're rolling into the trauma bay, if they already have a blood Y hooked up, it's really easy for that incoming team to just throw on a unit of their blood and start that blood administration. So it's great when we land with some of our ground crews that don't have access to blood. When they have one of these up, it just cuts down the timing it takes for us to administer that blood, because this isn't an instantaneous process. So same thing applies. We have a 500 ml bag of normal saline. You can use any size. It can be 1,000, it can be 250, but we generally use a 500 bag. And then we have the blood Y right here. Sorry about the crinkles on the mic. All right, so you can see the anatomy of this device is a little bit more complicated than just the standard IV tubing. We've got a couple pieces that we didn't see before. So right here, we have the 2 ends that I was talking about before. Now, for both of these, when I'm getting this set up, I'm going to close those roller clamps. I don't want those open as I'm spiking my fluid or my blood right away. The next thing you're gonna see is we have a 3rd roller clamp down here, and this is where it all connects. So I'm also going to close that one off right there as well. Now, right here in this drip chamber, it works the exact same way as the other drip chamber. This just has a filter to filter out some of those potential clots in the blood products. And then here we have a rapid infusing bulb. So if I want to give blood a little bit faster, I'm going to squeeze this and it's going to help pump the blood into the patient. Some people have this, some people don't. If you go to the hospital, they'll probably have a connection for their rapid infuser. But generally speaking, there's some way to kind of speed up that administration. And then of course you can always put a pressure bag on if you have to. So now the process is relatively simple, but there's a couple extra steps. So first things first, we're going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to take this blue cap off. Remember, sterile field. I'm going to take this guy off right here. And again, sterile field. And then I'm going to connect that in. Now, I have this guy closed right here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open this up and I'm going to fill that drip chamber. Now, I want to fill that drip chamber past the filter if possible. So I want that to go all the way up to the filter and beyond, just so it covers that filter. The next step here is I need to fill this bulb. Now this took me a couple administrations to actually figure out what to do here for this bulb, because I felt like there was always air in here. The best thing you can do to fill this bulb is to actually turn it upside down. we're going to undo this second roller clamp, and we're going to fill the bulb from the bottom up. And that's going to ensure that there's no air in there, and that's going to make your blood tubing much more effective when you start actually flowing the product. So I'm going to go all the way to the end, just like before. It's going to start dripping out the end. Perfect. Preferably, I've got a warmer it's going through as well. And I still have a little bit of air up here to show me the blood actually dripping in. Now, when I get blood products, all I'm going to do is I'm going to close this top roller clamp to the saline, and I'm going to spike the blood on this one. I'm going to open the roller clamp, and I'm going to flow it directly into the patient. We aren't doing like a one-to-one mix. If we open both of these at the same time, what you're going to get is you're going to get blood coming up into the saline. So we usually keep this closed and then flush the tubing out afterwards. Now, if I want to infuse this quickly, I can show you this really quick and get my carpet a little bit wet. I wouldn't actually do this normally, but if you want to start giving this quickly with this tubing in particular, make sure the other one's closed. I'm going to do that. Now, when I squeeze, and I open this clamp up, when I squeeze, you can see it comes out really, really fast. So I can squeeze that very quickly into the patient to do a rapid transfusion of blood. Generally speaking, we like blood to be flowing manually. We don't like it hooked up to a pump just because that can agitate the blood cells and cause some breakdown. That being said, you're going to see hospitals put it on pumps all the time, especially if it's not a rapid infusion of blood products. So if you have any questions, leave them in the comments down below, and I will see you next week.